Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Bigley. I am the director of the Venable Foundation, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. We're going to be talking about the upcoming application deadline, which is on February 3rd, but also just provide some general guidance on grant applications and to provide a little bit of insight into some new procedures within the Venable Foundation that you will encounter. So let's get started. So today, again, I'll be talking about our process and give you an overview of the Venable Foundation, our eligibility, our priorities, and our process. There are some changes to this year's application process, particularly the addition of an LOI, a letter of interest, for anyone that has not have a history with funding from the Venable Foundation. So we'll talk through that. I'll provide some helpful tips and tricks for proposal writing, things that resonate with us, as well as with other funders that you could use, hopefully elsewhere in your grant applications. I'll provide a grants portal tour, give you some screenshots of some key points in the application itself. We'll talk about some frequently asked questions, some FAQs, and then there will be an opportunity for audience Q&A. The chat is disabled, but there is a Q&A button that will allow you to put in your questions that are percolating as the conversation goes. One little tip, though, I would say is if you can hold on to some of your questions and see if that gets answered in this presentation, that'll avoid any repetition. But if it doesn't get answered and we get to the FAQ section, by all means, start inserting those questions into the Q&A box. So what is the Venable Foundation? Venable LLP, Venable is a law firm, and it established its own foundation in 1982. The firm itself is almost 125 years old, but the foundation was founded just over 40 years ago. We started making grants in 1983. Our philanthropic investments really complement the other aspects of the firm's community engagement, including, of course, pro bono, because we are a law firm, but also volunteerism and sponsorships to galas and so forth, which are not Venable Foundation grants. Those are separate. The foundation is funded by the equity partnership of the firm, specifically through a set percentage each year. So that is a unique aspect of our work. We're actually one of the largest law firm foundations in the country. And our focus is on nonprofit organizations that are strong, that are providing impactful programs, and they're run through a competitive application process. So it is not a given every year that someone will be funded. It is a competitive application process year after year. So let's talk about eligibility. Sometimes this is where some of you may realize that you might not be eligible and then drop off the call, but hopefully this provides some clarity on what is eligible and what is not. First and foremost, you have to be a 501c3 nonprofit organization currently, and you have to be doing work in one of the firm's 8 office locations. I'll talk about those locations in the next slide. Funding is available for general operating support or for project-based support. We do not provide sponsorships, galas, or special event sponsorship, but a project within an organization we could fund. Nonprofit or national organizations are only eligible to apply for a project grant that's focused in one of Venable's 8 office locations. So you can't apply for your operations for your national scope, but you could apply for a project that's focused on one of the cities. And we do fund direct services with demonstrable impact, so we're not funding advocacy. We need direct service engagement. So there are things we don't fund. We don't fund religion. We don't fund organizations that are closely tied to any religious entity or that proselytize. We don't fund schools, and we don't fund parent-teacher associations. Inevitably, there's always several schools that apply each year. And that's because they haven't reviewed the guidelines. So please, if you're a school, you are ineligible. We fund education programs from nonprofits that are running education programs that may partner with schools, but we don't fund individual schools. We do not fund nationally or internationally focused organizations with no direct impact. So it's the reverse of what I said earlier. And then sponsorship, special events, we do not fund. Where do we fund? Local areas where we support are within the various Venable Foundation communities, the Venable law firm communities. So we have a large presence in DC and Northern Virginia. including the Virginia counties on the screen: Falls Church, Fairfax, Arlington, Alexandria. We do not fund in Montgomery County and Prince George's County, Maryland, on the other side of the metropolitan DC area. So please note, DC and Northern Virginia. Baltimore City and County we focus on. Again, not outside of those two areas within that Maryland area. New York City, we focus specifically on the 5 boroughs. Los Angeles City and County. San Francisco Bay Area, with really focusing in on San Francisco and Oakland, really trying to focus in on that because the Bay Area is so massive. We do support in Chicago, specifically within the city, but extending into Cook County. And then 2 of our newer office areas. Miami began grant making last year, so the Miami-Dade County. And then Denver. Denver is brand new. We're actually soft launching in Denver, so we'll gradually ramp that up. So we are just beginning in the early stages of being available for Denver-based nonprofits. So our funding priorities. We have a variety of service areas that we support, from human services to arts and culture and everything in between that's on this list. Anything we support has to fall within at least one of these buckets. Oftentimes, organizations ask, which funding priority should I identify in the proposal? Because there is a drop-down menu that asks, what is your priority area of focus? And inevitably, each applicant will bridge 2 or more of these funding priorities. Pick the one that's most relevant to the proposal and to your organization. And it's really just a classification point. It's not a disqualifier. There's no separate budget for each entity or each funding priority. So what's new for 2025? We have been receiving a massive number of applications each year. Over 1,000 applications came in the door last year, and we funded just shy of 37% of those. So it is highly competitive, and we do have a track record of funding organizations year after year. It's not a multi-year grant process, but it is a way for us to keep those partnerships going and keep us collaborating. That said, recent grantees within the past 2 years, if you've been funded within the past 2 years, or if you've been invited to apply from the foundation by me, a full application is required. That does not change from last year. That is the same as anybody else had encountered in the previous years. So you don't have to worry about this next step. All other organizations that have not been successful in funding, or maybe this is your first application to Venable, you must submit a letter of interest, an LOI. These LOIs are reviewed on a rolling basis throughout the year, and it is a simple paragraph that allows you to provide a little bit of further context about your programs and impact. These approved requests are invited to apply for an upcoming deadline. It doesn't have to be for the most immediate deadline. It could be for a future deadline this year. And then declined requests must wait 12 months before submitting another LOI for consideration. There's a lot of factors that go into why an LOI may be declined or approved. It could be the availability of funding in a particular office. Some offices have larger budgets than others. It could be a certain docket area that does not have a lot of representation in a particular office or community. So for instance, if we would like to bolster our environmental funding in San Francisco and you apply as such, we may look more kindly at that. It really varies. Or it could also just be you weren't compelling in your paragraph. Yes, it is only a paragraph, but it really should sell the reader on what you're doing in the community and why it's important, the number of people reached, a really quick snapshot. So our process is open. This is the LOI process is one way for us to manage the volume of applications, but also keep it open and competitive. We have 3 deadlines a year: February 1st, June 1st, and September 1st. Keep note, these are application deadlines, not LOI deadlines. LOIs are a rolling basis. If you submit an LOI on January 29th and the deadline is February 1st, it might be a little tight for you to wait to see if that gets reviewed in time. We will do our best and make sure that we can review everything that's come in for those LOIs, but the application deadline to submit a full application is February, June, and September 1st. Keep note that if the deadline falls on a weekend or a holiday, it moves to the next business day. For instance, February 1st is on a weekend. So the actual deadline for this upcoming year is February 3rd, 2025. So it's essential that you make your case in both the LOI and the proposal, depending on which one you're working on at that moment. Anything we support has to really answer the access and opportunity question. How are you providing access to services and addressing a need? How are you providing an opportunity for individuals, for residents to be successful? All applications are reviewed internally and vetted to ensure they do align with our funding priorities and fit the eligibility criteria. And funding recommendations are put forth to a localized committee of attorneys that have been selected to serve on the Venable Foundation Grant Committee. So New York attorneys are reviewing New York proposals. Denver attorneys are reviewing Denver proposals, and so on. Everything stays local. So some tips and tricks, some things to be cognizant of as you think about your proposals. Apply when makes most sense for your fiscal year and when you can make the most compelling case for support. You're on the webinar today, but if it makes sense for you to wait to apply into our September deadline, because that's when it's helpful to know at the end of the year that you're going to get funding for the following year, please do that. Pick the deadline that makes the most sense. You get one chance for an LOI, you get one chance for an application each year, each calendar year. You can apply for project versus operating support. People ask me, which one should I apply for? Well, most times operating support is the golden goose. It's what people would like the most, and sometimes it's harder to raise funds for that from other foundations. I would say if you're a locally focused nonprofit and only focused on that one city and it's a Venable city, apply for operating support. There's no reason not to. If you have a multi-city approach, think about the project support, and it would be a project in that city. You could also apply for the operations project. The project would be the operations of that particular city, and you would have a separate budget that would identify what that budget is for that city. In writing your proposal, get to the point, don't bury the lead. There are so many proposals coming in the door, it all starts to blur together. And oftentimes when reading proposals, I'm left thinking, I don't know what this organization's doing. They haven't described it yet, and I'm 2 pages in. So think about how you can put those most pertinent case-making statements at the very front. First paragraph, first several sentences. What are you doing? Why? How are you impactful? Give me those essential points early in the proposal. It gives me a reason to continue reading. It gives other people the same motivation. Be sure to detail the depth and breadth and impact of your activities, including those key data points. You would be surprised how often proposals lack the numbers. There is often missing data, don't know how many people are engaged, how often, what's the scope and sequence of those engagements and that impact. You might just say somewhere in the proposal, I reached 10,000 people. Okay, how often? What are you doing with those 10,000 people? Is it once a year? Is it once a month? Once a week? So just provide some of those key points. Identify what sets your organization apart from others. Why is your work important? How are you providing a value added to the community? How are you different? And really drive that point home. Keep the proposal length in mind. The best proposals are succinct. Usually the narrative section of our proposal, the guidance is it's roughly about 2 pages of typed text. That is roughly the requirement. And I would say those are the best proposals that are succinct and get to the point. And then you will be registering yourself in the grants portal. One staff member can own an application in the grants portal. So you can't share that application with 3 different email addresses. One email address has the login and owns that application. You can have multiple people registered at your organization in the grants portal, but only one can submit that application. So that leads me into talking about the application portal itself. We use a system called Smart Simple to manage our grants process. So if you go to venable.smartsimple.com, you will be able to see the registration options. You will register as a new user if you haven't already registered, and you will have this screen pop up about 2 options. Are you an organization registration or are you an affiliate organization? The difference here is quite simple. If you are sharing your 501c3 organization number with another entity, or you're using a fiscal host that applies on behalf of a variety of different nonprofits that don't have their own tax identification number, then you would use the affiliate number or affiliate organization registration. The affiliate allows you to create a record separate from anyone else that is using that tax ID number. If you were to do that with the organization registration, that first option, the data would get mixed, and every time someone new comes in, it would override your data that was in there earlier. So think carefully, be careful and intentional with this. If you are a standalone nonprofit, the first option, organization registration. If you are using someone else's 501c3 or you share that number with another, use the affiliate. Even if you are a chapter-based organization, like our Reading Partners or a Higher Achievement, use the affiliate because you are a different site, different budgets and programs and intention. Once you click that, you will be asked to find your organization in the system. So thankfully, I get less questions about this these days because people are reading the directions, but really the key is read the directions. The top of the screen tells you to fill in one criteria point here, one search function. So you do have the option to insert the EIN, the tax ID number, or the name, the address, and there's further search fields below. The only one you really need to look at is this first one with the blue arrow on the right side of your screen, the EIN. Type in the EIN and also see the guidance at the top. Do not use spaces or a dash. That will not yield a result for you. It'll get an error message and I'll get an email from you saying I can't register. Eliminate the dash, eliminate the space, you will find your organization. This ties into the IRS database. Get your organization clicked, and then you will be able to register. So this screen is your dashboard. Once you're all registered and confirmed, you can enter the application dashboard, and you see on the left-hand side of your screen is a profile. You have your own profile, my profile, and you have organization profile. So you'll need to complete those and update those there. Make sure your name, address, all of that information is present. And this is also a good place to go back to if your organization moves office locations. You would update your profile here to reflect the new address. On the right side of the screen is general information. We've talked about some of this, the deadlines, the eligibility, and then you click that Apply Now button. Before we talk about Apply Now, at the bottom of the screen is the My Application section. And at the very bottom, you see several tabs. You see Draft, Submitted, Sent Back, Under Review, and Approved, and so on. So draft, when you start an application, when you click Apply Now, that draft will start for you. And you can go back to that draft by coming to the dashboard. And if you see that number 1 in parentheses next to draft, that's where you find the draft. And if you have multiple drafts, that number will be 2, 3, 4, whatever. So all your drafts, all your progress will be saved under My Applications. And you can see it when it gets pushed to submitted and when it's under review. It's a progress tracker. So jumping up to the Apply Now button, that's what you'll click once you've updated your profile and you're ready to submit an application. And it's going to ask you for some eligibility questions. So this is the precursor to submitting an application. So are you a 501c3? Are you located in one of the office locations listed there? Third question is, do you discriminate? Next is, do you promote or proselytize any religion? Next one is this a sponsorship or a fundraising event? Again, these are all eligibility questions. And then the last one, which has the arrow next to it. Have you been funded by us within the past 2 years, or have you been invited to apply? So if you are brand new to us or have not been invited, you're going to click no here. This is the question that will take you to the letter of interest, the LOI. So please be sure to read all of these thoroughly and answer them accurately. There are a couple organizations who have incorrectly answered these questions, and they get pushed to a full application when they really should be submitting a letter of interest. So please don't think that we're not looking and paying attention. I want you to pay attention to this as well as the applicant. So if you are submitting a letter of interest, you would click that, and it would take you to the paragraph that you would submit that I described earlier. If your letter of interest is approved, or if you are a past grantee and submitting a full application, this is the beginning parts, the beginning page of the application itself. The application has 5 sections: the organization information, financial snapshot, your primary contact, which is auto-populated with your information as the account holder, and then request information and attachments. Most of your time will be spent on that 4th tab, the request information. That is the narrative. That is where you will put an executive summary that is about 300 words, couple paragraphs, give a summary of your organization, and below that is an open space for you to make your case. There is not specific questions asking, please detail X, Y, and Z, or do this or do that. It is an open space for you to make your case. If you have other proposals that you can amend and attach and copy and paste into the request information narrative, by all means do that. Just make it as easy as possible, but make your case. You want to be sure to make your case. This first tab is organizational information, just asks if you had a connection, not required, but we'd like to know that if you do, and a couple of other questions. The financial snapshot, it provides you with a couple prompts for attaching various documents like your budget, your profit loss, balance sheet, and a list of contributed income. Those are mostly attachments in that field. And then in the final page, the final tab there, attachments, that is an optional section. If you have attachments, 1 or 2 is sufficient. If you have an annual report you'd like to include, or anything else that really drives home the content of the narrative, you're welcome to include that. So some frequently asked questions. Before I jump into these, if anything doesn't get touched on in this section, please feel free to start populating the Q&A section with your questions. I do ask that if you have a question, please ask it in if it's broad enough that a general population can benefit. I'm not looking to provide one-on-one counsel to organizations in this webinar format. So it should be something that other people could benefit from. So please keep that in mind. So what is the average grant size? Right now, our average grant size is just under $10,000. It's around $8,000. Our first-time awardee size is around $5,000. Sometimes it's a little lower depending on budgets if it's a super small budget organization. But by and far, first-time awardees are around $5,000. And our average grant size is between $8,000 and $10,000. Do we provide multi-year support? No, we provide year after year support to some organizations, but it is a every year application. You have to submit an application every year to be considered for support. You don't get it if you don't ask for it, essentially. So you've been declined several times in a row. Should you reapply? That's really a question on your own time and resources. If an organization has been declined 3, 4, 5 times in a row, it might just not be the right fit. It is very difficult for me to reach out to every organization that has been declined and provide counsel. I'm actually not able to do that because of the sheer volume. I wish I had more time in my schedule. I am a staff of 1 running the foundation, both on the big picture and the admin. So it is a challenge to provide that counsel. So I would say if you have the time and are able to reapply and you feel you have a good case for support, given everything I've just said in the webinar, then by all means, put a proposal forward. But if you continue to get declined, it might be something that you reevaluate and think about, is it worth our energy? And frankly, sometimes in some way, this is why the LOI process was developed, is to give you less time or make you spend less time crafting an application, especially if it's not able to move forward. The ones that are accepted for a full application, from LOI to full application, are ones that we see that have a potential promise. They might still not be successful. There's no guarantee in anything, but it is that one step that helps us to suss out which ones might be more viable. So you have projects in multiple Venable cities. We're in 8 cities, so you could very well have 2, 3, 4 cities if you have a more of a national approach. Should you apply for every city in your own portfolio that fits Venable? I wouldn't. I wouldn't, especially if you're brand new to us. If you don't have a track record with Venable support, the best use of your time, energy, resources is to focus on one. Find the one that you think is the most marketable, that has the most success and potentially the most need. That, where can Venable really make a difference? That's sometimes very helpful for us to know. So think about where you could do a test and see how well it does with one city. And then maybe that's a future conversation to think about expanding to a couple cities in the future. May you apply using a fiscal host? I've already covered that. Yes, make sure you fill out the affiliate organization registration at the very beginning of your registration process. That is super important. Do we provide matching grants? Nope. Our dollars are no strings attached, no matching requirement. If you get funding from us, we will send you the award announcement, and then roughly 3 weeks later, you'll get a check in the mail. So it's not us holding back the funds. We want you to have it so you can continue with your operations. New nonprofits, may you apply? Yes, but I would encourage you to have at least a year or 2 under your belt with successes, with something to show for it. If you are a brand new idea, just starting out, or have very little to show about your engagement in the community, you're not going to be successful with our funding. It is too competitive, I'm sorry to say. So the more you can show that you have done X, Y, and Z, and you've been impactful in certain ways, and you have that to demonstrate, the better off you'll be. Sometimes organizations, especially more so like ones that have national focus, but might be coming into a particular city, will reach out and say, we'd like to do our work in this particular city, and we want Venable Foundation to tell us what communities to go into and what neighborhoods. And that's not something we do either. We want the idea to be baked. We want it to be fleshed out, and for us to really see that there's promise there. Do you need a connection to apply and be successful? No. Last year, of the grantees that we awarded, roughly 52% had some connection, whether it would be an attorney on the board or some sort of connection to a staff or attorney member. It's not required. We like to see that our attorneys are engaged. That's why that's a question there. And sometimes I reach out to those attorneys that are identified in proposals and say, hey, can you tell me about this organization? Like, are they doing good work? And do you know anything about them? And then in a rare situation, happens every year or two, an application may have an attorney listed, and that attorney knows nothing about that organization. So their name is just put there haphazardly without any thought. So if you're putting the connection down, make sure you put down someone that actually can speak to the organization. How much information should you include in your proposal? Kind of touched on this. It is a fairly succinct proposal. The recommendation in the narrative section is about 2 pages of typed text. So it's not a lot of space. It's not a 10-page proposal like some other foundations I've worked with in the past. But 2 pages is enough to really make your case and give a thorough overview of what you're doing and the depth and breadth. When will you know the decision on your application? So it is a 4-month process from deadline to decision. And keep in mind, this is application, not LOI, because those are reviewed on a rolling basis. But for the application, it's a 4-month process. So for the February 3rd deadline, you will have an answer by the spring. So most likely late April into early May. And that's all depends on the volume of proposals. It depends on the schedules of the grants committee and our ability to make decisions on those. So usually we've been successful with a 4-month process from deadline to decision. And then once again, here's the website. So all the information I've talked about today is on the website. I provided a bit more context to it, hopefully, and hopefully described our new LOI process in a way that's digestible. But after this webinar, there is a brief anonymous survey that will pop up on your screen. I ask if you take a moment just to give me your feedback. That would be very helpful. Did we miss anything? What was good? What wasn't? We always ask these during the webinars, and it's good as we look to future sessions. Not seeing any other questions coming through. I just want to thank you again for your time. I know time is valuable and for sticking with this. And I wish you the best with your LOI creation and your application, depending on which stage you are in the process. So thanks so much and have a good rest of your day.